Good noon to you. It isn't even after, is it? It is the time of noon, which is such a great transition. We love the mornings, right? No? That reminds me of someone saying to me, I'm going to miss February. I said, yes. Why? Because they love the darkness.
Oh, I don't love the darkness.
No.
Can you hang
but
on to
I
that?
was just amazed. They love
Just so I don't bump
miss the darkness. I said, you really call me to something. And I was thinking of your painting, Dana. Dana Grubb's painting downstairs, which is exquisite, and it's called Flight from the Dark. Yeah, so you wouldn't be one to say, I love the dark. You're going to fly from it, not wanting to be lost, okay? We run from the darkness of our thoughts, the very darkness of what? The unknown. So we fly from it. So I said to this person, how is it that you love the darkness? And guess what? She loves that many more hours of sleep. So that helped me a lot. Because I thought, how could anyone crave it? It is in the light of what you were saying, huh? So today we are going to be walking through an amazing journey. And perhaps you've made this journey, you artists, but for me, to walk through the science of the acrylic walk, Dana is going to be with us. And I said, well, tell me what you did before you were an artist as such. Well, in a way, you've always been an artist. But she worked as an engineer before she retired. Now, she worked as an engineer in artificial intelligence. And, wow, well, what does that mean? Dana, tell us what you said to me.
Are we ready to start my talk?
No, I want to hear what you said about it. No, you're not listening. Okay, so we will be left guessing what the implications of artificial intelligence are. In the meantime, she transitions to this acrylic art and encaustic expression through wax in art. So, tell us, you're so modest, and as you said, shy.
I'm worried we're going to run out of time because I want to do it tomorrow.
All right, well, let's go for time. And then in that time, we have 5-minute increments, right?
We can talk.
And we'll talk then.
Perfect.
All right, good.
So we have one mic today as Ellen told you, I'm Dana Grubbe, and I'm here to talk about acrylic pours.
You want to talk into the microphone so we can hear you?
Can you hear me without the mic?
No. Yep. No. Yes and no. See, that's it.
Okay.
Yes and no, so how about trying it?
Okay, so this is today's plan. We're going to talk about some caveats and who I am, what the handout says, and Todd, would you pick up one of those handouts? And there's handouts back there if you're interested in making acrylic pours that have detailed instructions. We're going to step through the process in this PowerPoint with pictures and photos of acrylic pours I've made, and there's a few acrylic pours in plastic bags that can be passed around, the ones back on the wall. Please don't pass those around because they're not protected. And then we're going to do a hands-on demonstration, and if there's time and somebody would like to try doing an acrylic pour, they can do that. Okay, this is my bio. I work in encaustics, I work in oil and cold wax. Nowhere on my bio does it say I work in acrylic or acrylic pours. So I'm not an expert. All right. I have an encaustic piece in the Museum of Encaustic Art, and so does Beth Foley, sitting right here. Wave. I have an the oil and cold wax piece downstairs in the Operation Monarch exhibit. My first experience with acrylic pours, besides having a niece who does them, was to take a 3-hour class when Bev and I were at the Encaustic Expo in Santa Fe. The first one was beautiful. The second one was not. And I thought, why didn't this work out? So I began to familiarize myself with the process of acrylic pours. Since November, I have made over 40 acrylic pours. My first ones aren't nearly as nice as my more recent ones, and I've learned a lot, and I want to share that with you today.
I wonder if we turned off one of the lights.
Oh,
because of the
right,
glare
that's a
at
good
the
idea.
top there.
Yeah. So in the handout, this is page 1, and page 1 is everything you need to get started. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff on this list, but the least equipment I think you could get by with is, I would recommend 3 colors of paint, probably white. And you need Floetrol, which is something you would buy at a hardware store. People use that, painters use that so they don't leave brush strokes when they paint your living room. And some substrate, something to work on, a piece of canvas, a piece of board. I paint mostly on framed canvas. So far I use inexpensive paints, but I just did order a gallon of Utrecht's artist quality paint, so eventually I'll move up, I guess. There are links down here. The first link is to Gina DeLuca on YouTube. I have probably watched 30 of her YouTube videos. She's one of my favorite acrylic pour artists on the web.
And who's that again?
Gina DeLuca, and it's on the handout. So if you pick up a handout, you can, you'll be able to find it. There's 2 other links here. One is for the specific gravity chart. Every pigment has a different weight. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then how much paint do you need for an acrylic pour? I think it's very important when you do these pours that you fill your cup to the top. And if you don't need a lot of paint, then you're wasting a lot. So you want to know what size you're going to need. So here's a chart that talks about how much paint you need for the size of canvas. Today I'm using, I think it's an 8 by 10, it says 3 ounces. If you get up to a 48 by 48, that's 4 foot by 4 foot, that's 80 ounces. So you really want to know how much paint you need so you don't over mix.
Did you come up with that chart yourself?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
There is so much information on the web. If this is something you're interested in, you're going to go home and Google acrylic painting, and I would, again, look at Gina DeLuca's site.
So is that, if you were using 3 colors, do you need, what was it, 8 ounces for the 8 by 10? Do you need 24 ounces, or is it a total for the number of
It's a
colors?
total, that's the total amount. And I'll do a demo and you'll be able to see it, and I'll have some pictures. So we talked about specific gravity of paints, how heavy a paint is. Here's part of a chart. Golden is the one manufacturer who always lists the specific gravity of their paint. And here you can see the number just on this page was from 1.5 to 4.3. This is just one of the pages. They offer this in alphabetical order, and they offer it in order of how heavy something is. And you can't just look at this and say, oh, yellow is X, some number. So there's different kinds of yellows. So Hansa yellow is 1.3, that's very light. It's going to float on the surface of your paint. Cad yellow, cadmium is a heavier metal, that's 4.6. That's relatively heavy. The bismuth vanadate yellow is 6.11. That's really heavy. That's going to sink right down to the bottom. It's the action of the paints that sink down or that float to the surface that make the little, let's go back a minute. So when we look at this, these little things are called cells, where you have one color inside another color. And that's made by this action of the heaviness of the paint floating up and down. Okay. So, I'm going to tell you how to do acrylic pours 3 times. You've got a handout, you've got the PowerPoint, and then I'm going to do a demo. So the question that I will ask you is, what's the most important thing when you do an acrylic pour? I'll tell you the answer right now. Be patient. This is, not only is it a question of how heavy the pigments are, but you have to give them time to work. So this talks about the science, the idea that you have heavy pigments, that you're going to wait for them to work. And this talks about how you prepare your area, which I have back here, and we'll talk about it when we do the demo. So you fill a paint cup with paint all the way up to the top, and you wait 5 minutes. And then you turn it upside down on your substrate, and you wait another 5 minutes. So what's the most important thing? The most important thing is to be patient. So these directions are on the handout. If you decide you want to make it, you can read them in detail later. You're going to see it live in a few minutes. There are sometimes complaints that people have when they work with acrylic pours. Sometimes your canvas is saggy. Sometimes there's lumps in the Floetrol if it's old. Sometimes people get bubbles in their paint. If you have one of those problems, you can look at this sheet. You can Google it on the web. You can send me an email. There are business cards back there somewhere. Okay, so here's an example of the paints I use. I have some golden paints. They're more expensive. I save them for special stuff. I have the high flow paints. I can add that at the end of a painting if I decide I need a pop of color that isn't there. I can add gold if I want gold. This is the white that I've been using. I just ordered a gallon of expensive white. But this white is what lots of people use because the purpose of the white on your canvas when you start painting is to make that canvas slippery. And then the paint you pour on it is going to slide off, and as it slides off, that's how you make your painting. So those are some of the paints that I use. These are the additives that I use. Floetrol is again what the painters use so there doesn't leave brush marks. I use a hair product that has silicone in it, and I put a few drops in every cup of paint. And when I begin to mix up the color in a cup, I put a little bit of this 3-in-1. Some people use a spray. My lungs don't like sprays. And then I have water, which is mixed 1 part Floetrol, 9 parts water. If you just add water to your acrylic paints, they can break down. So by putting the Floetrol in it, it's a little slipperier, less likely to cause the paints to break down. So, if I want to make a painting and I need 3 ounces, I know what size glass I can use. Or I can use a 2-ounce glass and a 1-ounce glass together. So, Target, Walmart, the dollar store, you can find little plastic glasses. These are actually glass, and those are really handy to help measure other glasses. And when I get ready to paint and I know what size I need, I'm prepared so that I'm not wasting paint. I have something the right size. These are other tools that I use. I have a cookie sheet, or this is a cafeteria tray. This is a pastry scraper, a plastic putty knife, popsicle sticks, and I use this little spinning wheel because I use it in Encaustic, and it was just natural. I would use it in doing acrylic pours. So here you see a setup ready to go. There's canvas on cups on the tray. The tray is there to catch the paint. Lots of people will take that paint after it dries, you'll catch it in the tray and they make jewelry with it. I don't do that, but lots of people do it. Although I don't mention it here, I have a level on my tray back there. It's really important when you do acrylic pours that your surface is level, otherwise it's going to roll off more on one side than the other side and the paint will be uneven. And if the paint's too thick or uneven, it can crack. The back of my canvas I tape to keep it clean, because otherwise you're going to have paint all over it. I also, to prevent it from being saggy, I have like a board in it that I take out when it's done. So here's an example of how I mix paint. I start with a little scoop. That's about, we'll say that's a ratio of 1, and I add a ratio of 3 or 4 of the Floetrol to it. I mix it up, and then I stir in just a little of the hair serum. If it's still not runny enough, I add some of that water that's been diluted with the Floetrol. The idea is that when you pick up that stick, you're going to have a little bit of paint streaming off of it. We talked about waiting 5 minutes. This is a picture of the 2-ounce cup that I poured to make the painting that's at the beginning of this display, and it's somewhere around here on the table. Can you hold that up for a second? Maybe you could pass that to the people sitting in the chairs over there. So I layer the paint, and in between the colors, I either put white or black so that the colors don't mix. If you were to put red next to green, you would make a muddy color. And so if you put a little white or a little black in between, then you're going to get a pure red and a pure green, and you're not going to see that at white or black very much. So after sitting for 5 minutes, do you notice a difference? Notice how the green was heavier and the blue was heavier and it sunk down in? That's the action that you want to get. That's what's going to give you the beautiful cells when you do the acrylic pouring. While you're waiting in that 5-minute time, you're going to put paint on your substrate. This is a piece of canvas. I pour the white paint on, I use the putty knife, and I flick it around. I want it to be very runny, very liquid. I don't want to be skimpy with my paint. I want to be generous with my paint, because if you don't have your canvas totally covered and you put your colored paint down, it's going to grab that canvas and not want to slide around. You want it to slide around. So after 5 minutes, I turn it upside down. We have another 5-minute time. Ellen's going to talk to us during that time. She's going to ask questions I'm not going to want to answer. You know.
But can't you see why there's somewhere in her that is an engineer? Oh, it's amazing.
Okay. And then, after 5 minutes, finally you can like pick that cup up and look at how amazing this is. See all these little cells? That is so exciting. That's the part that everybody wants right then. And then you put your fingers under the substrate and you move it around and cover all or as much of that surface as you want. The tall vertical one back there, you'll notice I did not cover the whole surface. That's called rain cloud, and I wanted it to look like rain coming down. So, once you've decided that you've covered the surface as much as you're going to cover the surface, you're going to put it back on the plastic cups on the tray, and as you can see, it's very messy. You want to be sure you take a popsicle stick or something and go along and clean off these drops, and you might do it 2 or 3 times before you get it really clean. If you leave the drops there, I do have tape, the tape will pull off, but you never know when you could upset the painting itself. This is also a good time to look at the surface of your paint. Sometimes Floetrol will have little dried specks in it, or sometimes it'll have a lump. You take them out right now. You can look and see if there's places where you haven't totally covered the canvas. If you want it to be covered, there's lots of paint down here. You can pick up with your finger or with a brush and put it back on. Also, you'd look for air bubbles. If you see air bubbles, this is the time where you would pop them. Some people use a creme brulee torch to make the bubbles come up and pop. Some people use rubbing alcohol. I don't get very many bubbles. You know, I normally take like a mat knife or something and just pop them. This is also the time where you might decide, I want to add some other color. I want to add some metallic decoration on it. So this is the final time when you're looking at it. This painting is not finished at this point. It will dry for another 6 or 8 hours. I did one last night that's 16 by 20 maybe, and it's still wet. So it can dry for 24 hours, and while it's drying, you've got heavy paints falling down, light paints rising up. It will change. You can walk away and come back 3 or 4 hours later and go, what happened to that part I really liked? It's gone. But anyway, this is the time that you might add additional paint to the surface if you want to try and change something. So in case you forgot, this is the one that you saw at the beginning. This is the one that I made in the process of making this PowerPoint. I added these red stripes. I added a little red up here and dragged it along. I was playing with opal iridescent bubbles, and so I added little dots. You can use a tool and drag it through the paint. You can use a paper towel, a wet paper towel, and drag it through the paint. When you do that, it'll make bubbles, but sometimes your color isn't as nice, so I don't normally do that. Okay, so very quickly, here's just a few of the pieces that I've made recently. These are 10 by 20. This one is on the table somewhere. This is a piece that I didn't like, and so I took the plastic palette knife and I mixed it all up, and when I did that, then I got a lot of bubbles, and then I added other paint on top of it. This is the one you see back along the wall. Deep in the Cave. That one is promised to pets without parents, and you can bid on it on the 14th, I think, at Stormwater. Most of the rest of these are all sold. So again, one of the things people often try to get when they do acrylic pour are these cells where you have different colors popping up in little circles.
Dana, that one that you just went past, go back, how did you get like some of the calm areas? Did that just happen, or did you have to paint a certain way?
I cheated.
Oh.
I wanted calm areas, and so what I did was to pour it like this, and then I took paint and painted these outside areas. Right, thank you. Yeah. And this has some, one of the paints that I have is a brand that Michaels has, which is a cheaper paint, but they have some that have metallic in them, and I find they work really well. And you can see this orangey red has the metallic in it. It
So
makes
there must
it
be 7 or 8 colors at least in that one?
Say that again?
I say there must have been at least 7 or 8 colors in that
Right.
last one.
Often when I do a larger one, this is at least 2 cups of paint. You could do it all with 1 cup, and people do, but I like the ability to
Just
you
a
know,
little bit more
offer different
control over
colors,
it.
right? The other thing that makes a difference that you'll see when I do the demo is that if the cup is tall and skinny, you get a lot more colors in it. If the cup is wide mouth, you're going to get fewer colors because they're going to spread out, and you don't get as many choices. And I guess this is the last one. Well, we're done. Okay. So would you like to see a demo now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just ask you a question.
No.
The white and the black, you have specific gravity for everything else.
No,
How do
no,
the
no,
white and black weigh out?
White, titanium white is always a little bit heavier. I had heard it was the
Okay,
heaviest.
let's listen to that question again. That was a great question.
Okay, the question was, what's the specific gravity of the white and black? I don't know of the black, but I know that the white specific gravity is very heavy. And when you put the white in, you'll often see it fall down. And it sometimes drags colors with it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thank you.
okay, we're going to move this because we're going to put that back. Okay, so you're welcome to sit where you're at. You're welcome to get up and walk up to the table and look at things. Otherwise, then you would have to like jam underneath your tray so that it is level. So here's my tray covered with a trash bag. Nothing special. You could use a cookie sheet. You could use anything you want. You want something with size. Hi, Lizzie. This is an 8 by 10. I have put a piece of styrofoam board inside. It's important that this be flat, not saggy, because paint is heavy. And then I put blue tape on it, which seems to be working okay. sits like that. So now, the challenge is to mix up the paint. Where did that go? Would you help open these up?
Yes, I'll take off my white shirt though.
Yes, take off your white shirt. Okay, so these are paints. Notice that they have plastic wrap on them. I mix these paints up. So the 3-in-1 I use, I'll show you in a minute, I use them both. So we want, see how that comes, that's almost thin enough. And I would use that the way it is. So, yeah, I think they're all good. I just was working with them last night. So I said 3 ounces. And maybe I would use 2. This is where I use the 3-in-1. When I'm done with this and I'm pouring the paint out, I want it to run out quickly. 3-in-1 is a silicone additive. And I'm going to put just a little drop. So this is like when you bake cookies, right? Or when you bake a cake and you put something in the pan so the cake comes out quickly. It's the same thing. And I don't use anything that's an aerosol if I can avoid it. So, because I have more white mixed up than black, we will use white as the base on this. You don't have to use just white or black. You can choose any color you want to use. For me, it's just easier to use white or black. We have lots of colors. Does anybody want to pick a color? Or a theme for color? Teal. So, the first color you put in is the last color that comes out. So, because I'm using 2 jars, I want them to have the same color on the top so that they will integrate with each other. I don't want it to be obvious that I can use 2 different containers. The big cups here are for white and black. I don't put any of the hair serum in the base color in the white or black. I do put white almost always in between the 2 colors. If I were doing yellow and orange, it would be okay. If I were doing like green and blue, I might do that also without something in between.
So after the bottom color, they don't have to be in the same order, they can be any.
They can be any color. And in watching other people do it, sometimes they'll fill up one whole container before they start on the other one. But I like to do it this way. This is gold that I just bought, and it comes in a big bottle like that big bottle. It's from Michael's, and I'm not impressed with it yet, but I'm going to give it another try. While you're doing this, you want to think about light and dark. You want to think about complementary colors. You want to think about repeating patterns sometimes. Sometimes you want to work more monochromatically, so you're only going to use 2 or 3 colors. This is no different than any other painting you're ever going to make, except, of course, you're not sure what it's going to look like on the stem.
And that's different from another painting now.
Oh, very good. Okay.
So you want that 2-ounce one to be all the way at the top.
I want any cup I use to be all the way to the cup. If it's not all to the top, if it's not all the way to the top, when you turn it upside down, it's going to rush down. And when it rushes down, you lose your cells and you make mud. At least I do. I have seen people on the web who don't do this. They use a half full cup and it's just fine. I'm not that person.
Now, is that your black there?
That's my black.
Okay.
I felt like I wanted something a little different. So you can, you know, you can use a black base and the white as a separator.
Danny, you probably already said this before I came, but how long you been doing this? You already said.
Okay. So now I have 2 cups. I'm going to put them here where you can see them.
Oh, she said, I wanted to do this.
How long? Really since November, the end of November. And I didn't make any for like January or February, and then I got interested again. We need somebody who's going to tell us when 5 minutes is up. Who's that person? All right.
Okay,
You are on.
all right. So can we sit down again for just?
Sure.
Yeah, let's, what does color do for you? Okay, nice and loud.
It can alter your mood.
Here's your mood. Anybody want to comment on that?
I like blue.
Hey.
You know, look how many painters has used blue and just the color of blue in their painting that can enhance the feeling of the artwork.
Aha. Okay, you might want to comment about that, or start with another color. Oh, I think that Bev is going to comment about that.
Oh, not necessarily about the blue, but I took a class in college of the psychology of color for a couple of different reasons. Not only if you were going through something and you felt sad, you would usually gravitate sometimes to the deeper, darker colors, blues and greens and maybe browns. Or if you had rage, you would be going to reds and something. So some colors denote or symbolize certain feelings and emotions. But the psychology that you can use for marketing, a lot of designers need to know about colors because some of the designers use red in fast food restaurants that you're fast to get out of the restaurant because the colors bother you a little bit or you're active more. And then the deeper, the nicer somber colors, those are the ones where they want you to stay and get dessert and appetizers and more wine. That's great. And then also hospitals are really cognizant about something that's soothing. And it's interesting to know too that if it's a hospital that has a lot of, if they do blood draws or something, they stay away from vein colors. So there's a lot of psychology that designers need to know when they're decorating on a commercial or a home basis. And gray is another one where for quite a while there was gray and mauve. I don't know if you remember that combination, but it was so stark. The mauve was a little bit warm, but it really wasn't that warm. So people were not reacting well to it because it just didn't have a warmth that people wanted in their homes and even in an office setting. So it's really interesting. There's a color of the year every year. This year it is coral. But last year it was
There's like
purple.
3 or 4 different colors. Each paint color, each paint company determines their own color of the year. You got me in the magazine I just got yesterday.
Of course.
There were like 3 or 4 different paint companies, and they all had a different color. One was gray, one was the coral. I don't remember the other 2, but
There's actually a profession in New York that chooses the colors for the year. So now, right now, they're probably 5 years out. But
Todd, do you want to say that again, because we want to hear?
yeah, there's a group in New York, and it's their job as designers to come up with the color variations from year to year, from everything from wastebaskets and shower curtains and rugs and in all your interior colors and what's interesting is I work with 2 print companies that for interiors, and each year they send me the colors, the secret colors of the year that they've spent lots and lots of time developing, and I'm sworn to secrecy. I can't give it out, this whole thing. But then I have those colors that I can incorporate into what I do for my interior type work. So pretty interesting.
I'm going to take a pause for a minute.
Yeah.
5 minutes is up, and if you want to come to the table for just a minute, and then we'll sit down again for another 5 minutes. So while we were talking, Notice that I go all the way around on all the edges. All the edges have this goofiness. So now we're ready to put the paint on it.
Wow. Exciting.
So, pastry, scraper on the paint. I don't recommend not holding it, but I wanted you to see it. We're going to slide it off. If I have a lot of excess paint here, I might flick it off on the canvas. Doesn't hurt. You don't have to clean it before you put your next color on. And you see that one spilled a little bit? And that's okay. All right, we have 5 more minutes. Timer?
Back to our conversation.
Yes, we
Let
can.
us continue our conversation about color. Todd, you were telling us.
Oh, that was awesome.
Okay. Anyone else?
I guess I
Ghazi,
always,
what does color do for you? You bring it out so beautifully in your. Oh, wait.
I don't know.
And in your dresses and your suits and your
Dolls.
tell us
I
dolls
I
and
like color. I don't know if that was scientific reason. I like color. I'm just drawn to certain colors. I'm more into color combinations. I like colors like together. More than just one stuff.
So you just kind of intuitively know how they go together.
Yeah, I like put certain colors together and textures and colors and texture all together. And just,
Like your blouse.
yes, that is beautiful.
I'm very colorful.
Next to your skin, and then you're either a winter, spring, summer, or fall. And that's really helpful because even men, a lot of times their shirt color, just it makes them look more lively, or some colors are not good on certain people, and they need to know that, and it makes you look better and more healthy. So that does a lot for you too.
And all of these colors. I was thinking of our chandelier, and it's back in the house as of 2 days ago. And it's in the office where I'm
Wiping something off, and it dawned on me I haven't mentioned that when you work with
How
acrylic.
about in the microphone? Call us together.
Sorry, if you'd like to join us up here, it's more exciting to be close enough to see it. I did want to mention, I was cleaning up a minute ago, and you do not pour acrylic paints down your drain, especially down our drain here. You clean up acrylic paints with paper towel, and when you get it off of all of your, paintbrushes and your whatever palette knives and things like that, then you can wash them with soap and water. Acrylic paint will collect in your drains. You don't want to ever wash it down the drain. Okay, so now we're ready. We have colors. If you look, you can see that a little bit has been leaking out. Also, you can see where the blue has fallen down. So I often spin this just a little bit. You can feel the suction. I mean, it's actually connected and holding up there. You can see all the little cells here. We love that. And I often will shake mine out. Not everybody does that. And again, there's lots of cells, lots of color. Okay. You notice I put on a pair of gloves. We're going to pick it up underneath, and very slowly, very gently, you don't want to lose those cells. We're going to move it around on the surface, and it will begin to pour over. And you'll go, no, not that color, I love that color.
Reminds me of Dolly's folded watch, flowing watch. It does.
Yeah, it does,
Dripping
doesn't
over the
it?
edge.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
And the things that make it move, again, are you have lots of paint on the surface of, the canvas. And I used extra paint when I did this because I could have done just the one container that I wanted to do 2. I did put black in there, but you probably won't see it. There's a little tiny line right here I can see. A little tiny line of black. The other thing you don't see is this whole side here on the left has almost no bubbles right now. That doesn't mean that there won't be bubbles later. The cells will come back. And if they don't, you can take your finger and you can move that paint around, and then you will have stirred it up, and then it will happen.
Butterfly wing.
Did you say that black's not there because it's heavier?
Well, it is there, it's just so
But-
thin.
Was it the thinness or the gravity, the weight of it?
It could be a combination. I mean, I only put in a very small amount. But I mean, each of these colors has white in between it, and sometimes you see it and sometimes you don't. You see the cells are already starting to form here. In the blue even.
If you wanted to paint over it, you just let it dry and you just do the whole process again. You don't have to scrape it or anything.
Right, you don't have to scrape it. Although if you really hated it, you would take something and you would do that, and you get a ton of cells. The square one I have on the table, that's the wooden one with the circles in the middle, I didn't like the color on that, and I scraped over it, that one. And you can see there's a ton of